All right, everyone. I hate to say, once again, as I predicted, I don't even really like putting it in the title because I know some people have a problem with it. But back in January, I posted a video saying that I could foresee years of legacy media attacks on sort of the alt media that was beginning to form online. I prefaced this on the concept that the style of attacks that were being used on politicians, honestly, that were kind of clickbaity and they weren't always true. Like, you think what you will about like Trump himself as a person. You can think he's a total asshat. But there's such a thing as an inaccurate attack upon his character. Not everything that's said about him in the press is actually true. I can spar with him on things too and say that I disagree with him on the Cuba deal, that I disagree with going after Iran and don't really have a problem with their current nuclear capabilities, which is basically, hey, well, we make electricity. I may say that and I may disagree with him, but if I were to haul off and say, oh, well, Trump said X, Y, and Z, and he never said X, Y, and Z, quite clearly, I may not like him as a person. Like, maybe I have a stick up my ass against him, but it doesn't make the actual thing said about him in that particular aspect accurate. It doesn't necessarily make it true. What I figured would end up happening is that as alternative media continues to grow, not just on YouTube, YouTube's a big one. YouTubers, I think, are at this point at the forefront of it. Anonymous image boards. We're not just talking about 4chan and Reddit, but they would be key. People there that have, they post things and those things can spread around. Certainly certain Facebook groups, people on Twitter. Certainly now within alt tech, people who have gotten bigger on Minds, on VidMe, on BitChute, on Gab, wherever it happens to be, would be in the same boat essentially. We're forming a vanguard of a new style of media in which entertainment, information and analysis, and even citizen journalism have become important. Only a few years ago, the limitations of YouTube in a political aspect primarily were, hey, YouTube is hosting the debate live, and you can, in occasion, a YouTuber or two might get a question in at the debate, and it was considered novel, and it was exciting and something new. But that was basically the limitation. For the most part, it was still a major network is doing the actual coverage. What Trump did very early on is he realized, I think, that a lot of the old guard media sites, they weren't going to listen to him. They weren't going to give him the time of day. He didn't really want to talk to them anyway because he knew that they would probably try to spin whatever he said, so he took to Twitter. Now, when I saw that he was being attacked this way by these same entities, I said, aha. The fact that he's semi-separating himself from the New York Times or CNNs of the world, or whatever it may be, including people on Fox. Look at him sparring with Megyn Kelly at the time. Somebody who he had words with before, honestly. When I saw that they had begun to viciously attack him for this, I said, aha, the next step will be that they go after the new press because they feel intimidated by us. Honestly, I think that these groups feel intimidated by people online. A few years ago, if you had suggested this could become a fact, you would have been laughed at. They said, oh, they're not scared of some random YouTuber, it's just, it's hokum, basically. That's you go there to watch cat videos. Now, all of a sudden, all of these same sites have begun to do exactly what I thought they would do, which is to character assassinate people, not just on YouTube, but online in general. You saw what the New York Times covered a few days ago in regards to the Las Vegas shootings. They said YouTube is letting conspiracy videos trend. YouTube is allowing the front page to be cluttered by people who are talking about the Vegas shooting and they're spreading tinfoil hat conspiracy theories. Some of those videos were conspiratorial in nature. My question is this: when did YouTube decide that it was necessary to clean things up at all? When did that specifically become necessary? You see, the pressure is coming from the legacy media. Money-wise, sometimes in a legal sense, they try to take advantage of the situation. And what they're doing now is seeking to exploit wedge issues, essentially, within fringe groups to try to cheapen and destroy the alternative media. What they're hoping to do is get, for instance, the furthest reaches of the right riled up against the far left against the far right. And you see their next strategy. I'm seeing it unfold now, and I'm telling you what I believe will happen over the coming, give it 6 months or so. They're going to try to label people who do not have fringe views as gatekeepers for the fringe. That is, the fact that people like myself are willing to hold discourse with people who will be labeled either retroactively or at the time far left or far right will then be targeted as well. We see it happening. Now, the Right Wing Watch article that was posted several days ago involves people that are not extremely on the right. But anyone reading that article will not notice the actual attempt to differentiate between myself or Sargon or somebody like that and the people on that list that actually are, ideologically speaking, most people would consider them to be on the fringe of the right. Now, I can hold discourse with them in public or in private, and I can talk to them normally, number one, in a sane, reasonable, rational way, because, you know, that's kind of what I do. Number two, I can tell some of these people are not as far out there as they're being cast off as. This includes people on the left. I've talked to people that on the left, they're considered sort of pariahs among the mainstream left because, you know, they're like, oh, they're far out there. They're like a hyper-progressive, like a real, like H.A. Goodman, Bernie Sanders fan. So any Clintonian neoliberal is going to consider him far left. They say, oh, well, you could never win an election because socialism and, you know, this and that. I may agree with some of that assessment, but he's not that far out there. And that's from the left. That has nothing to do with the fringe of the right. I'm surprised that somebody like H.A. Goodman wouldn't be put on such a list. Oh, he talked to somebody who is 2 steps of separation from Richard Spencer because he had a conversation once with somebody who likes the same band Spencer does. Therefore, H.A. Goodman, too, must be a Nazi gatekeeper. There's their new fallacy. The rising fallacy will be this, and this is what I warned of for months would happen on some of these sites. I'm not worried so much about a response from the tech firms themselves. It would be very, very hard for them to justify, well, you spoke to somebody who we consider extreme, and we're kind of going after them. You know, they're still there. They haven't even been kicked off these sites largely. But ideologically speaking, and so, you know, now you're going to be a pariah too. I don't think it'll come from the tech firms. I think it'll come mainly in the form of character assassination by the legacy media. Now, there was another thing to warn of this that happened only a couple months thereafter when I warned of this back in January. PewDiePie. PewDiePie gets attacked by the Wall Street Journal at the time. And they're saying, oh, well, he has, like, fringe beliefs. He's dog whistling to Nazis. He's, you know, he's doing all this crazy stuff. That was never true at the time, not even remotely. Everything there was taken completely out of context. And this was just a test. This was a test of their capability to go after people that supplied online discourse and commentary. But if they had targeted somebody who was political in nature, people would have taken the forewarning very seriously. With PewDiePie, who's just a gamer, ultimately his fans know he doesn't have out there political beliefs. He's not really that politically correct. He primarily does gaming streams. It sort of slipped under a lot of people's radar. But the sticks noticed it because I knew exactly what they were doing. This is going to continue. People now that are on like the center left, the center right, you watch what's going to happen. They're going to be increasingly likened to the fringe of whatever side that they're on. And then they're going to try to let, at first, I believe, nature take its course, which is that they're hoping to inflame the fringe left and right against one another. We see this in real life, too. They're hoping to get people so worried about these fringe groups that pretty soon the center left and center right will be drawn into the fray, separate out into their respective camps that are semi-separated, and then that's when the magic happens. If you can get the center right to loosely align with the actual far right, and the center left to align with the actual far left, because they feel more threatened by the other side, the politicians make it big. Wedge issues start working really well again, as opposed to now they're kind of falling flat because of online discourse. Wedge issues begin to work. A lot of the, and I would give a warning to anyone covering like politics on YouTube, you know, you've made it big, you know, like hundreds of thousands, millions of subscribers or whatever. Do not take the bait. Do not let yourself be drawn into an, oh, the other guy's more scary echo chamber. Resist that. And then you win. You'll be just fine probably through the end of this moral panic. Those that fall by the wayside will be those that allow themselves to get gulled, to get cornered into a situation where they have to stress some loose loyalty to one fringe or the other, because then they can be attacked, ideologically speaking. I would make this warning to all these people, and I can sort of tell you. I won't, but I could probably tell you who's going to make it and who's not. Based solely on their reactions to stuff like the New York Times, you know, sort of YouTube and the conspiracy theory videos of Las Vegas shooting, the Right Wing Watch article, Wall Street Journal with PewDiePie. I can sort of tell you who makes it and who doesn't. Again, I won't, but, you know, I have a pretty good feeling that I've got some accuracy here, because I saw it coming. That's what they're going to do. So their next step will be to try to, like, label me. Probably groups that are on the right, they'll try to label me like a left-wing gatekeeper, because I'm just sitting here supplying social and political analysis. And because I'll talk to people, like I talked to H.A. Goodman, so, you know, ooh, he's socialistic, so left-wing gatekeeper. Gatekeeper for cultural Marxism, and they're going to get the center-right riled up against them in hopes that they, you know, join into that crowd generally, so they can be targeted more easily. The same will happen with the left going after people saying, well, you know, far-right gatekeeper or something, is not willing to directly condemn and disavow every right-winger in the world, therefore gatekeeper for the far-right or the alt-right or whatever. In this manner, the legacy media wins big too, because you see they're already... Do you find it slightly coincidental, everybody, that around the same time that YouTube says, yeah, we're going to have like CNN and all these other groups streaming on our site in a streaming bundle, and you can buy it and it'll be like Netflix for cable news sort of, you know, content. Do you find it slightly odd that it was right around that time that the attacks began? And that they're continuing now thereafter? No, they're trying to force the commentators on YouTube to the side by cheapening their brand, by character assassinating them. It's what they're doing is, in some cases, not even, I believe, fully legal. But they're attempting to defame people who are beginning to rapidly grow within political discourse because they don't want to be replaced. They want a slice of the YouTube pie. They want a slice of the Facebook pie. They want a slice of the Twitter pie. They want a slice of the alt media pie. And so they're hoping to put enough pressure on alt media that it ends up having to sell out so that it can't become a competitor to the sites, that they're barely making the leap to. It took them years and years of squabbling with Google to even get a streaming bundle going on YouTube. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they had coordinated with some of these other companies that threatened to remove their ads just so that they could get in on it. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised. Little conspiratorial? Yeah, maybe, but that's business. That's the way you conduct it. They're supposed to be cutthroats. And by the way, no disrespect to these legacy media outlets on the fiscal side. That's what they're paid to do. It's what their shareholders want them to do. They want to make money. I'm not surprised in the least. I don't even consider it immoral. Now here's how the online community can fight back. And I pointed this out back in January. Number one, there has to be at least a loose sense of togetherness across the spectrum. If the center left starts joining up just with the fringe left and the center right with the fringe right, they're going to attack one another mostly. Legacy media gets off scot-free. Legacy pundits get off scot-free. All of these so-called activists that are really craptivists, they get off scot-free. Both left and right. Oh yeah, you're certainly letting the fringe win, because I'll tell you what, individuals who are actually really nutty and out there are just useful idiots. They're just pawns of the legacy media. Makes for really good wedge issues. When you have a group of people, they shave their heads and paint swastikas on themselves and stuff, and they go do crazy shit. It makes it really easy to use, rise of evil bigots as a wedge issue within politics. It makes for good clickbait news stories. It's great for all the establishment people. It's not going to stand against them. It's just a bunch of nuts. And then they can extrapolate. You'll only have a few hundred people in that crowd. All of a sudden, they're talking about millions of secret Nazis. They're doing that every single day. The right-wing media, the establishment side of it, is doing the same with, secret communists. Antifa, must be growing really rapidly. No, in most cases, you're talking about a few dozen or 100 people. You're not talking about major crowds of people that are actually dedicated to communism. But if you can get the far right to believe that, then you can try to get the center right to believe that. Again, great wedge issue. Great clickbait for Breitbart, for The Blaze, for Fox News, for all those goofballs, number one. And right-wing pundits, they can continue doing the same thing that they've been doing for a long time. Do you honestly think if these problems were so prevalent, since these wedge issues have been used for many decades, don't you think that somebody would have risen up to stop all of this by now? If it were really that threatening, don't you think that DC would at some point do something about it? The media would at some point consolidate to universally condemn, the rise of some sort of political violence? Yeah, they would have. By now, they definitely would have. They're never going to, because it's all about money to them. That's all it's ever been about. They want more money off of YouTube. They want their streaming bundle to be more popular. So how do you do that? How do you compete with people who don't have any overhead? You character assassinate them. You try to cheapen their brand to the point at which they can never become, they can't really be in the center and just supply analysis. They feel compelled in some way to join one lunatic fringe or another. And then you marginalize those fringes once you've put them in as part of it ideologically. You've tried to categorize them and defame them, honestly, and say that they're part of some lunatic fringe. Then you can prevent them from growing as quickly. And then the great mass, the establishment, because, you know, come on, old social media is becoming establishment anyway. A lot of the people on these platforms, growing older, number one, less given over maybe to the rebellion or the interesting content and looking at stuff that's more mundane in some cases. Or just, you know, mundane entertainment, something more standardized, more polished or whatever, you know, with a lot of jump cuts and a lot of edits and a $10,000, you know, recording setup in a $100,000 studio. Sort of like the cable news, I guess. A lot of those people, there won't be any independent sort of commentators anymore. They'll either be part of a fringe or they'll have been gobbled up by one of these corporate groups, which can always just bribe them. By the way, I wouldn't be surprised if some of these commentators, this might be their other strategy. I'll tell you another thing that might happen. If you've made it big on YouTube within politics, there may come a time, once you've been defamed enough and you're under enough stress because, you know, you're like crowdfunding or whatever, there may come a time at which you get approached by a very, very happy executive from CNN or Fox or something like that. Says, hey, yeah, we know the real story. We feel for you because, you know, we're trying to fight these lunatics too. And, you know, we see you're having financial trouble, but we think that you're pretty cool. So why don't you produce an online show for us? We'll get you started. Here's like, you know, 50 grand or something. Oh, you know, wonderful day for you. Oh, how happy. Let's just buy up the talent. That'll be their next step. When they realize that they can't defame everybody, when they realize that they can't crush everybody out of existence because the net's still way, way too decentralized for them to even pay everyone off, then they'll take what's left and they'll try to scoop them up, I think. I think that's what'll happen. I already see it. I don't even have 200,000 subscribers. I get people contact me, oh, I work for such and such corporation. I'm not talking about those spam ones that you get from some group that wants to like create a syndicate of YouTubers, because a lot of that's just bunk. Like, it doesn't even exist. The company's not real, and they want your personal info, basically. It's a scam. But I mean getting contacted by legit business entities, small or regional. Oh yeah, you know, we wanted to talk to you about our product. You know, you could use this on your videos. You could make a video about our product, blah, blah, blah. Hell, I can't even imagine what some of these other commentators have 10 times as many subscribers get on a daily basis. Can't even imagine it. That's why advertisers know, by the way, that it's lucrative. But first, they've got to push some of the people out of the way onto the fringe so that that becomes their echo chamber. Because then it makes it easier for them not to supply political commentary to the vast majority of people that are actually using the platform. The other danger is this. People who are already leaning to the left or the right, if they're part of an echo chamber, which is what they're seeking to promulgate through cracking things apart and censoring things. Once you're part of that echo chamber and your worldview starts to shift, it makes it very difficult to hold court with people on both the left and the right. That's why I try to do both. I'm willing to talk to H.A. Goodman the same as I'll talk to Tara McCarthy. I'll talk to somebody on the left. I'll talk to somebody on the right. We're going to find areas we agree, areas we disagree. That's just the way that it works. It's called being sane. So avoid those traps. Watch and see if I'm not right. Then maybe more people will start thinking really, really good and hard at some point about my ability to read these things. Because I already said that this was going to happen. It's happening now. You see, over the last week, it's really coming to a head. Now, this is part of a moral panic, but it's one they're seeking to take advantage of, and we must understand, above all else, you must understand these groups that pretend to be part of some general center-left or center-right movement don't even have such views. They don't care about politics, except it can make them money. It's about money for these people. The New York Times, they want to make money. They're a corporation. CNN's wants to make money. They're a corporation. Fox News, they're a corporation. That's all it is for them. They don't care who they have to defame, who they have to clickbait. They really don't care. Why do you think that all of these pundits jump to conclusions on one end or another immediately after some disaster hits? It could have nothing to do with any politics whatsoever, but they're going to talk about it. And they want their clickbait at the top of the news feed on YouTube. They don't want some independent commentators to be there. It could be someone who's totally mundane. But the problem is the people that grow the most quickly typically are the ones that do the clickbaiting. And so they tend to be part of some ideological fringe. It doesn't have to be political. It can be religious. It can be social. It can be conspiratorial in nature. It can be anything under the sun. It really doesn't matter. Left or right, religious, irreligious. There's no differentiation between these things. They all have their own audience. They fall into an echo chamber. They get pushed in one direction or another. And it's happening because of propaganda. And it's going to continue happening. Thankfully, when the moral panic dries up, those that are still standing and still have credibility, I think will do quite well. At this point, I don't, by the way, think that either ideological severe fringe survives the moral panic intact. I think it shrinks over time. There was a time in which I said, well, maybe the further right elements would continue to grow for some time. But now I think traditionalism would be like the furthest right group that would actually grow. That may very well take hold. I would still be willing to predict that. But people who are marching with tiki torches and stuff, I just don't see it happening. I don't think that you're going to have a good result in the end. Neither, by the way, will groups like Antifa. But they're hoping, the legacy media and pundits, that is. They're hoping that you'll think that they'll continue to grow because then they can justify more censorship. The more censored things get, the more independent commentators are going to have to adopt the methodologies of the legacy media anyway. Legacy entertainment, the same thing. Hollywood has problems over and over again. Why do you think they want to go after somebody like PewDiePie? It's a competitor. It's all about the money. That's all it's ever been about. It's all it ever will be about. Power is just a means to gain more money, at least for them. That's about all. Peace out.